Wednesday night, and welcome to A Look on the Plus Side. I'm your host, Rob Whiteside. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for finding us, for being with us tonight, for spending your Wednesday night with us. We appreciate you. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. It's called The Park Adventurers Club. We've got lots of content. We'll tell you about that at the end, but please subscribe if you have not, and also give this video a like, as it helps people to find us. Stick around to the end. We'll tell you how you can help support the channel, too. But for now, tonight, we're going to be reviewing a classic, the 1940s Pinocchio, and with me to discuss it is Mr. Ron Deanna. How are you, sir? Oh, are you muted? Oh, you're...
Yes, I was.
Okay, all right. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing good. You doing okay?
Yes, sir. I am having a dandy day. We are going to be talking about a classic, and it's so funny to me that I got to go back and rewatch this classic movie. And first of all, I have the worst time spelling Pinocchio. So during this process, I've certainly learned to spell Pinocchio. That's a thing that I've been able to handle now. But this is something you and I had talked about reviewing a while ago. It's 85 years old this year. And when we had talked about doing it, what's your connection? What is your love of the movie, the 1940 Pinocchio?
So I love all the classics, and I think it was almost 7 or 8 years ago now. I had started another show called Drawn from the Vault, where I started doing in-depth, like feature-length documentaries, starting with Snow White and moving forward. I kind of had to abandon that because to do one of those pretty much took up a month of like of full-time work. Like I really put in like 160 hours into writing, recording, researching, and editing like Fantasia. So I did the first three and I did Pinocchio. So there is still the Drawn from the Vault of Pinocchio out there. And they pretty much all run the same length as the movie. So I think it was almost 80 minutes. Patrick was in on that show. And some other people. So it's something I did a lot of love for it because I think it might be the best looking of the classic Disney films.
Nice. Okay. I love when you go into Disney Plus and they break everything down by, like, here's stuff from the 80s to 90s, here's the 50s to 70s, and here's the 30s to 40s. And of course it starts with Snow White and then goes to Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, Bambi. These are the classics, and the funny thing to me about these classics is in a lot of cases I haven't seen them as many times as I think I've seen them because of, you remember the old like sing-along, the Disney sing-along videos, and so I worked in the Disney store back in the day when we would have these sing-along videos, and they would be playing on a loop back by Plush Mountain, and I would hear all of these things or see them, and I've seen them so much that I think, oh, I've seen that movie 100 times. But I think Pinocchio, this may be like the second or third time I've ever actually sat down and watched all 90 minutes of it. And a lot happens in this movie, which is kind of cool. So again, this one came out in February of 1940, and when it came out, an hour and 31 minutes, and it was rated G. But I got to tell you, in rewatching this with 2025 eyes, it's a little bit. It pushes the envelope. It's a little raunchy in places. It's a little like darker in places.
It's dark and nowhere near as dark as the original material, though. Like I went really in depth on the original serial / novel that Collodi had written, and I mean, Pinocchio originally died at one point, but the publisher convinced him to come back. He was hung. Jiminy Cricket dies in his first appearance and spends most of the time as a ghost. Like it is a morality tale, and this compared to it is Disney Junior show. It really is. Like it's dark, but nowhere near as dark as what it's based on.
Yeah, well, again, when I'm looking at this thing, I'm like, okay, so before we get into it, again, I want to kind of mention that at the end, we'll talk a little bit about the attraction that was inspired by the movie and the live action sequel and some of that stuff. But the movie itself seems to be driven by some strong moral lessons. The whole cannot tell a lie thing, or his nose will grow. So being truthful and being honest, and then these are the things you need to do to be a real boy. And it's almost like it leads him down this path of responsibility and honesty and these things that they're trying to instill here. I feel like there's a lot of moral lessons in this one, and at the
And
same time, I don't think they teach them very well.
no, and it's, as I said, it was definitely a morality play in the original one, but it's kind of different. He's just so naive. There's nothing malicious or bad about him. He is a toddler coming to terms. Like, he really was born yesterday, so you can't be too heavy-handed with him
Right.
and still make him likable. And he's, but yeah, the lying, like the nose thing. Let's just talk about that. Like, it's the most famous thing everybody remembers, but it is such a small part of the actual movie. It's one, what, 4 minute scene maybe.
That's a great point. I mean, that's the one thing that, like, especially when they retell the story of Pinocchio and say something like Shrek, the nose thing is like always one of the bits. And you're right; they don't go back to the well over and over again. It only happens the one time, and it's so weird the way that it happens because, like, he grows like a bird's nest and birds and flowers and like the whole thing. It's just it seems like, well, where did the birds come from? Like, how is it, how is this part of the whole thing? And again, I get it's a cartoon, but it's a little bit crazy. And you're right, it's the one thing we kind of know him from is telling the truth, and so his nose doesn't grow, and it's just that one time.
I mean, what really the bigger impact on this more than Pinocchio as a character, I think, has to be Jiminy as a character. He became as much of a mascot for the company. I mean, other than maybe the Fab Five, has anybody been used as much as him over the years? Has anybody had that kind of impact and that just what he's hosted Spectro Magic, he wishes, uh, you know,
Wishes.
how many different educational shorts. He was Stacy Must Sevens in the 80s, Must Do Sevens in the 80s. Like, he really,
Environmentality or whatever it was called.
yeah. Whenever
Yeah.
they need to teach you something, it goes to Jiminy as the conscience, even though he's not the best conscience.
Right. And you know what? And when this story opens up, I mean, he's the one who's like, introducing the story to us, and he's singing the song. He's singing that "When You Wish Upon a Star," and that one again, it always gives you the Disney feels. You say he's kind of the mascot for the company. That's kind of their signature song, "When You Wish Upon a Star." I mean, the movie Wish kind of revolves around the idea of wishing upon a star, and you hear it involved with almost everything Disney, and even like that audio like earworm at the beginning when when you see the castle and you hear it, you hear that in dreams come true thing. It's a signature thing, and it didn't come from Snow White. It came from the second movie. And the other interesting thing about the timing of this movie is it's 1940. It's the time of World War II, and they're like it's right at the beginning of it. It's almost like doing something at the beginning of COVID. They have had this money that they got from Snow White, that he's in Walt's own words said they wanted to make the next one bigger and better, and now they had this money to build a studio with the house that Snow White built, and then go in and hire teachers and use more reference and try new tricks and upgrade the cameras and all these things that they wanted to do. And I feel like it really shows. I feel like we're really seeing, in some cases, next generation animation, and in some other cases, I feel like not so much. I don't know how you
I
feel about that.
I think the vast majority of the movie is such a step forward from what Snow White was. Snow White was very, soft focus, rounded characters, still very cartoony. The backgrounds and the detail and the little things like Geppetto's shop, the way Figaro moves and Monstro moves is something way beyond Snow White. But there's other scenes, as you said, that you could tell they were. This is where they were cutting some money, like a the boat to Pleasure Island. They're just like
Oh, I
shadows and background. That's the thing.
yeah.
But like then when Jiminy arrives at Pleasure Island, just the detail of him hopping through those scenes. Uh, I mean, there's an establishing shot in this movie. It's the first night today, right after Pinocchio comes alive, where they're focusing back in on the town the next morning. It's what couple seconds of a tracking shot that is. They had to reinvent the multiplane, turn it on its side so it could pan, push in, remove panes, and do all those things. And I think we did the calculation that this shot, just an establishing shot, nothing to the story, would cost the equivalent of over $1 million in today's money just for that one scene. And that was 2% of this film's budget
Yeah.
just for that scene. And it shows, but at other points, you could tell where they ran out of time and money and tried to do things because this wasn't even supposed to be the second film. Bambi was scheduled first, but they were having such a tough time learning to draw those characters that this got moved up. And then it
Yeah.
didn't make its money back, as you said, because it happened at the beginning of World War II. They lost all their overseas markets. It was considered a pretty big flop at the time, even though it's now like adjusted gross in the top like 50 or 60 movies.
So it was 2.6 million to make it. The worldwide gross, like you said, they were limited in the markets they could release it in because it released in February, and by the time we hit December, the world, everyone was at war. I mean, the war had already begun, but December 7th, we're in, right? So, um, looking at this, it says that the worldwide gross was 38, rounded up to $39 million. And then, of course, they did something that they don't really do much anymore. Is they re-released it to theaters. They
Well,
like we're seeing Star Wars happen right now that they're re-released in theaters. But this one was they would do the whole thing where they put it in the vault, they bring it back, they put it in theaters, and then they put it on video. 1984 and 1992 were the two that come to mind. What were you gonna say?
right. But that 38 is that overall gross.
Yeah,
That's the combined gross overall. So it eventually made its money back. It just took a lot of time to do so. And I mean, the same thing happens with Fantasia and all that. Snow White was that hit right out of the box, but you could see in these next few films between Pinocchio to Dumbo, Dumbo was cheaper, shorter, bigger, like a bit of a success. The others were not so great. That's why they go to the package films for a while after that because they just can't afford to do these things on such an elaborate scale when they're have these markets where they can't get all of Europe. Nobody's going to the movies in Europe. That was a
yeah.
huge part of it. That was and then once the war's over, you have you can't take money out of these countries. You have to spend it back in if you do the movies, and that's how we end up with things like the live actions where we're having Treasure Island and stuff. So we have all of this done because the war really changed the company, and it doesn't really get back on track until what Cinderella.
Yeah, yeah, 1950.
I mean, not that
Yeah,
everything else isn't great between here and there. It's just
no,
financially, it was not.
yeah, it was easier to do the amalgam films of let's make mine music, melody time, fun and fancy free, the Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, all of those where they could have little teams working on little individual shorts, put them together and call it a feature and release it. That's those all happen in that time period. And then of course there's movies like Three Caballeros and Saludos Amigos that were done to kind of build a bridge between North and South America. And then you have the war stuff that he did, like Victory Through Air Power, where they came in and they said, "Hey, make us a movie because it'll help us for training exercises, etc."
That wasn't even them asking. Victory Through Air Power was Walt put that forward to convince them, to convince the U.S. government they needed to invest on that air power. That wasn't them asking him to. He did that on his own or with
Well,
some other
and
people.
but there is a speech that Walt did where he said that the government said, "Here's what we need. What do you need to make it? We have $85,000." like
So
like So
Oh,
he
so maybe that
probably,
was someone asked him to convince Roosevelt to put the money for it, but it was
yeah, maybe.
definitely that it wasn't from the top down. It was to convince the top to do those aircrafts because if you could find a copy, I don't think this stuff's on Disney Plus, right? That
No,
the wars.
no,
So if you could
no, it's not.
find those Disney Treasures DVDs, they're probably like 100 $150 on eBay. Uh, they're great, and there's like so
You
much
talking about
great background.
the silver boxes? Like
Yeah, I
they're
could pull one off the shelf right here and show you in a second.
yeah.
But
All right, so let's pause and let me talk. Let me talk about the animation because I wanted to talk about that establishing shot you were talking about, where we kind of come into the little town. It's a quiet village, almost like recreated in Beauty and the Beast. That little like pan in scene, his brand new multi-plane camera that he had. And then there's this scene when you had mentioned the boats to Pleasure Island, but this scene really got me. This is the coachman taking the kids to Pleasure Island, and this looks like I drew it. Like if you look at their faces, like, and it wasn't meant to be paused, it wasn't meant to be like broken down at this point, but there's no detail at all in this picture. It's just like shapes and blobs at that point from that far away. But then they cut one scene later and you've got the detail. You've got the coachman and the kids, and each kid has a different look and a different face and a different expression on, just that quickly from one bit to the next. But there's when they show it from far away and it's going, you see those like that's those corners you were talking about.
yeah, I think that's what I meant was though that shot. But it's this is also, as you said, this is not meant to be in 4K. This is not meant to be something you can pause. They didn't think about it at the time, and that one, even through into the late '80s, they weren't thinking about pausing with the Jessica Rabbit crotch shot and the Playboy poster and the Rescuers.
Yeah.
Like they weren't thinking about this. It was when something was on for a frame, it was on for a frame. You had no way of rewinding and going, "Did I see that?" That was just something completely different. And I mean, I'm glad we have this technology, but we have to think about what was done at that point.
No, for sure. And again, I mean, I'm just noticing. I'm not coming at him for this, but I'm just noticing that you see it that starkly from one to the next. And I agree. And it was not meant to be done that way. One thing, again, before we leave, just specifically talking about animation, is I think that they did a great job with the kind of effects. So here's like Jiminy and like the dirt and the smoke, and then we see it later with like the wind or water when it's raining, or when you mentioned like Monstro. They do a great job. Like that's one of those things that we look at now in computer animation, and I look at Moana 2, and we talked about Moana 2 a couple weeks ago. The water scenes are just spectacular. But last weekend I rewatched the Incredibles, and the water scenes there not great. So I mean, even in that span of time with computer generated effects, we've seen such growth. But in this one, I feel like the effects that they did within the animation were next level for
I,
especially 1940.
I mean, distortion filters, dry brushing, uh, all opacity layers. They could do all that still in composite film back then. It wasn't done digitally. It was harder to do, obviously, but it still existed at the time. And I mean, so many of these things like the old mill and things like that were done as like test runs to try each of these effects to see how they work and train the people to use them, and then they combine it all into these features where it shows up so well. I mean, they reference these underwater scenes for The Little Mermaid. Like they trusted this for hand drawn stuff realistically all the way into the late '80s.
Yeah, every bit of this though, the slow motion and him with the rock and needing the ballast, and um, eh, eh, this is the one that gets me right here, where you see a little bit of the, like the little bit of blur. And I mean, yeah, it's so well done. Again, looking back at it and going, wait a minute, this was 1940. This was made in 1939. Like how great was
Well,
this?
think about like the lighting scene where the blue fairy comes in. Like in a modern computer generated sense, you could adjust lighting in a scene. that has you can't do that in hand drawn. Like you may be able to put a small filter over something, but like if you really want to have something glow around her, you have to like animate that in
Yeah,
different colors. It's just
yeah.
incredible.
No, agree, agree. Um, yeah, I think that they did an amazing job, and even with her, she's translucent, which I hadn't noticed before. As she's in this scene, she's sort of, you can see through her, which, I don't know if that was a difficult thing to do at the time or not, but um, it could have been an easy thing. But I've now there, so you can see the stuff through her that's in the background. And I think she's interestingly done animation wise compared to the rest of them. And you've got a lot of different things that you're working with here. You've got a wooden boy, and you've got a cricket, and you've got a fairy, and then you've got this old man and a cat. Like they really kind of were running the gamut of the type of things that they're. It wasn't like they're just doing two bears and like we got to
No,
have a bear specialist. It was like a little bit of everything.
and the fairies and kind of Strombolis feel that soft focus, rounded feel of animation that came through Snow White, while Pinocchio, Jiminy, Geppetto all look a little more focused and human. Well, yeah, I would even say human like. Like if you don't see Pinocchio's limbs, it's hard to tell he's not human. It's very simple, and they went through so many. They did the original very puppety version, then they did a ventriloquist puppet version, and nothing was working. So they just said, make him look like a boy. Just give him square limbs.
Yeah. So yeah, again, I think animation wise, it's ahead of its time. When we talk about ahead of its time, Fantasia that came later, like that was one that wasn't appreciated at the time. I think this one was appreciated at the time, but I think that the animation was next level. Walt had proven himself with Snow White. He spent the money to make a better movie the next time. He didn't just like take it to the bank or whatever. As a matter of fact, he still owed the bank some money when he was doing that. But he's building this new studio, hiring people, and really really doing everything he can to take his art to the next level. Which unfortunately, like, what would that have looked like had the war not happened? What could this have been had the war not
Yeah.
stepped in at that time? One of the last things I want to kind of talk about with the animation is this interesting choice they have here, where it's Jiminy Cricket is looking and at the house, and then like we jump with him, like almost like his POV. Like how original is that? Like who thought that up? Because we only see it that one moment, but it's sort of a next level thing that we are seeing the thing through his eyes before we actually see him enter the picture.
One other things you get angles from his point of view or from other points of view that are done more like live action shots to try and emulate those live action movies. Like that's something you probably would have done. Like how often do you see that kind of shot in like a horror film or something, where it's low to the ground and moving along
Yeah.
and things like that. And they did a lot of that. Like when the transformation of Lampwick into the donkey is done, the final part is done in silhouette. One, because it's easier to do. Two, because it's less scary. But three, it's also referencing that German impressionism that they referenced in Snow White of how live action movies were doing those things. So they were really trying to take the film vernacular at the time and put it into animation to say, hey, these are real movies. These are not just for kids.
Yeah. Agree. I mean, again, it, yeah, they do a good job of that. And while I'm watching everything from Pleasure Island, I keep thinking about the Pinocchio's Daring Journey, which again we'll talk about at the end here. So let's switch for a second because in modern animation, there's a lot of it that's done for adults. There's adult humor. There's a second level to the animation, or I mean to the story that maybe the kids don't get at the time, or maybe it's just a little something for the adults as you're watching a movie, where there's just like a nod to something and we all get it. um, I feel like there's a lot of adult things in this one to that same in that same vein that maybe I didn't notice when I watched this when I was younger. But I feel like as cherished a character as Jiminy Cricket is, and so don't come at me for like talking about Jiminy Cricket in this
Oh
movie.
no, no.
He's a womanizer. He's very lewd in so many ways. Like there's the bit where he's dancing with the girl on the music box and goes, "Hey babe, let's want to sit the next one out." And I'm like, did he just say that? And then there's the bit where he's like, they have Pinocchio is on stage and the can dancers, and he like gets his glasses so that he can get a better look. And then there's the part where he's like accidentally got his hand on a woman's butt, and like I mean, there's all these, and it's innocent enough, but it's just like there's enough of it that I'm like, that's a pattern.
Oh yeah, and I mean that's very much like what these animators did. Was it
The gags.
who was the one that did all of was known for drawing all the like sexy girls? Like was it Frank or Ollie or like very much like what would be on the side of like a bomber or like they would paint on the side of planes. He would do these like pin-up style girls, and that was a common thing. So yes, those the animators know that, and they're gonna put that stuff in there. And Jiminy is a flawed character, and I think that's what makes him so endearing over these years. Like if he was just a conscience, like you'd be getting like you don't need a you don't want the a preacher to be your you don't want somebody perfect. You want somebody who's giving you the perspective of someone who understands those temptations and things. And he comes across that way.
Yeah,
And it
a little bit of
also
a
comes
rascal, let's say.
across very much like unfortunately for and I can't remember his name off the moment, Ukulele Ike, Cliff Edwards. Was that Jiminy's voice? Uh, and he, unfortunately, the man was this fatally flawed individual. Like basically drank himself to death. He played Jiminy up until he was 71, but he died penniless. To the fact where the studio were the ones who bought his gravestone.
Yeah.
Like SAG paid for him to SAG or after whoever paid for him to be interred, but it was the studio's like, no, we owe him this. We will pay for his memorial.
Well, that's nice. The only
Yeah.
name I recognize really from this cast, as we kind of turn to talk about the cast a little bit, is Mel Blanc was listed as the voice of Gideon, which is so funny because I feel like Gideon just kind of makes noises and
There were a lot of lines cut, is my understanding.
gotcha.
Thorough, like Thorough
Thurl Raven.
Ravencroft is the whale. I mean, so there were
Clarence
other things
Nash as
like,
Figaro. There's another one, Dal McKinnon as donkeys.
yeah,
So again, there are some other names in there, but like Mel Blanc would be the biggest one in there. But when I'm looking at all, the same thing we had just talked about Snow White. Stephanie and I talked about Snow White, but the same thing happened in Snow White that happens in Pinocchio is that the cast, as big a deal as we make today, like who's going to be cast as the voice of this or who's going to be cast as the voice of that, the cast was seemingly not important because they didn't even make the credits in the first two movies. There are no cast in the credits because as it
no,
opens
and I,
up, it's animators, it's the storyboard, it's all these things, and then they go into the movie, and then it's the end. And so, literally, when you go into Internet Movie Database, all of these people are listed as uncredited, 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 uncredited because they literally
right,
weren't in the credits.
but they were still like Dickie Jones as Pinocchio was a very recognizable voice to people. He was already a famous child actor in a lot of westerns and things like that. He was in the same year. He was in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. As I said, Cliff, I think it's Cliff Edwards.
Cliff Edwards,
He
yeah.
would, yeah. So he would have been, if they had it at the time, the first platinum selling artist. He might be the first person ever to have sold 1 million copies of an album. He did Singing in the Rain before there was a Singing in the Rain. People knew these voices even if they weren't being touted, and I think that honestly was just they had no representation as a union, so they weren't being put out there. But like credits really didn't change until the 70s. They were, at the beginning it was George Lucas forcing credits at the end by wanting to do this the scroll at the beginning that really changed the way credits were done. He basically, I think he got kicked out of the Directors Guild at one point because they gave him a special dispensation not to have the opening credits in Star Wars, but they wanted them in Empire. Even if they were the reduced credits they were doing by the 80s, they wanted opening credits there. He said no, and they threatened to kick him out. And he's like, okay, fine. Like,
Yeah.
I own my production company. Like, you can't tell me not to hire myself as a director.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, but those are the people we look back on and go, "Hey, they changed the game." Whether it was Walt Disney and like daring the bank to shut him down, or like beg borrowing, and pleading
Yeah,
for money to open up a theme park or whatever. These are the people that paved the way. And if it, there's a line from the A League of Their Own that Tom Hanks says where he says it's supposed to be hard. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And so these people who kind of draw a line in the sand oftentimes are the ones that change the game and move the needle. So um, let's talk a little bit about about Figaro just for a second, because it's weird to me. First of all, that he Geppetto kind of takes Figaro for granted. I feel like he's like, go open the window for me, cat, because that's a thing that cats do, or go say goodnight to Cleo or whatever. And then
yeah.
here we are years later with Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, and all of a sudden Figaro is somehow Minnie's cat. What?
So that
What?
happened. That happened in the 40s. Like Figaro and Cleo had their own short, I think, in 43. After this, and I think after that point, Figaro became Minnie's cat. He, she, not sure what. Uh, I mean, as we know just from the sign in the village house, Figaro is a cat, and that's it. But yeah, the whole making, because it was one of the, so you have the goofy Pluto problem in this film as well, because you have Gideon and you have Cleo. So
Mm,
Cleo was very much drawn as a good cat, like
Figaro.
and acts like a cat. Hmm?
Sorry, you
Sorry.
said Cleo, but I think you meant
Oh
Figaro.
yeah, Figaro. Figaro acts like a cat. Well, then we have anthropomorphic versions of cats, even if they don't talk, are still walking around upright. So being that well done cat, that became something that they could reach from and use over and over again.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I didn't even notice. Literally, didn't even notice the whole like Gideon and Honest John. Because you're right. Like, why are those two characters animals and everybody else is a person?
That goes back to Kaladi. There were dozen, like even by Disney standards, a lot of anthropomorphic animals in that. Like other, like obviously Jiminy is in this, but there was like birds and like a whole town full of animals that were that were they were the fools, and that teaches you know uh Pinocchio not to be foolish. It's all there, and it's all kids' tales. So having these some nods to that, but I mean, Monstro's still a whale, but still like has personality and is vindictive, and yeah, it's so very weird how the animals exist in this one.
And you know what's so funny is when I'm watching these movies, Ron, I'm always questioning everything. Like I feel like Geppetto is a bad puppeteer. Like as he's making a puppet and he's trying to like be that, like he's bad at it. And then there's all like the thing about Figaro risking his life to open the window for Geppetto. Like all I question everything, and I never question the fact that there's a fox and a cat in the world where everyone else is is a person, until of course they turn into donkeys. But that's
Because
weird.
when
I don't know how I
when
overlooked it.
because when you're looking at something that's so blatant out there, you're just this is it, accept it. But like when things, it's kind of like an uncanny valley thing. Like when it's a little off, like a cat following commands and opening a window. Like if that was a golden retriever, I think we would just brush it off. Like yeah, so a dog can do that. But like
Yeah,
a small kitten is something different.
yeah. Fire Chief just said he's a toy maker, not a puppeteer. He's a clock maker, isn't he? Or is he a toy maker?
He's a wood carver in general, and
He's a wood
that's
carver, yeah. Well, just again, the funny thing is that he would go to the like. I would never go to the trouble to make a violin because I wouldn't know how to play one. But if he's making it for himself, which he is, because he wishes it to be a boy, I would have thought he would be better at it. And he kind of drags them across the floor. So I don't know, just a little thing. But like I said, I'm noticing that, but I'm not noticing that Honest John is literally the only like fox, and that Gideon is the only cat that is walking around and being people.
well, I think in the original, Geppetto doesn't wish for his puppet to be a real boy or whatever. There's a block of wood that's alive, and it gets brought to Geppetto to carve something that could be alive out of it.
Gotcha.
So
Uh
there's literally a block of wood that's screaming as Geppetto's carving it. I think in the original,
oh Lord, that is
it is
horrific.
it is screwed up. It is majorly
There's
messed
so
up.
many of these stories that like the Little Mermaid and all these things that they give you the Disney version, and you go back and look at the original, and you're like, wait, what? Yeah, that's kind of crazy. So, but getting back to whole like, so he wishes for him to be a real boy. He becomes a real boy, or not a real boy, but he becomes alive, and then he the next morning the first thing he wants to do with his brand new live boy is send him off randomly to school, and it's just like you got to go to school. And I just think, because my wife is an educator, I think of like all the paperwork that's required to sign a kid up for school, or that everybody takes their kid to school on the first day. But nope, not Geppetto. He's like, hey, like you said, he was literally born yesterday, and he's like, here's an apple and a book. School's that way. Best of luck, and don't get into trouble. And obviously he's going to, because he doesn't know any better. And I'm surprised he knows where school is. Like, where was there, like, did they sit down with MapQuest ahead of time and go, here, you're going to take 4 blocks down and turn left, and that's how you're going to get to school? He seems to know the way to school. It's just, I mean, it's, again, this is a 1940s movie. I shouldn't be picking that kind of thing apart, but that's the only thing I was thinking at that time was like, you should take him. You should take him by the hand and take him. But then the story doesn't happen.
Yeah,
Um,
it's there's a lot of weird. I mean, the fact that all of a sudden there's a puppet boy, but then again, as we said, there is a fox and a cat walking around as con men.
Right,
So
right, exactly. Well, and the part about like I feel like they take a lot of digs at actors, which is funny too. Like there's a lot of like tongue in cheek about taking shots at actors in this thing. It's like, oh, you don't want to go learn. You want to be smarter. You want to be an actor. Like that's one of the things that he tells him. And then Jiminy says a couple things about actors too. I just think that that's pretty funny. Um, so he gets messed up with Honest John and Gideon. They end up being at Stromboli's. He becomes an actor, and everything's great until Stromboli gets wind that he may think he wants to go home and throws him in a cage. And then here comes the blue fairy to save him. And like you said, that's the one moment where we have like him lying, which is something a little kid would do. A little kid would like go, rather than get in trouble, I'm just going to tell this story and not understand that it's not the right thing to do. So, but again, he's young, he's naive, he's new, and so they have that one point about how a lie is as plain as the nose on your face, which again goes back to the morals of this whole thing. Again, it's the nose gag with the birds, and then like the leaves falling off and it turning into fall and all those things. It makes me think of the first Snow White movie, where they used to like go around the studio and like people would get $5 if they'd come up with a good gag they could use in the movie. There were a lot of those little
yeah,
gags in here as well. So
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of animators who had control over their characters and stuff, particularly in this one. Um,
so let's talk about Pleasure Island for a second, because with Pleasure Island, that's when some of the scarier stuff happens, and also again a lot of inappropriate, like the kids of the age, it's like smoking cigars and drinking beer. I mean, it's not like they're just like playing hooky. There's like they're going legit, like crazy. There's a place called the Rough House, and the first thing I think about when I think about Pleasure Island is obviously the place that happened in Florida, the Pleasure Island there, and the fact that they're not the same. Like that, it's this whole other myth about Was it Merryweather
Yeah,
Pleasure?
Merriweather
And
Pleasure.
and not that it's because it seems like an easy grab. Like, why did we never build a pleasure island somewhere? It seems like you literally have a land ready to go, even if it's about the Rough House and Tobacco Road and all this stuff. It feels like maybe we would have done that, kind of like the Minions land. I don't know.
I think it was meant. I'm sure it was probably in one of the millions of plans for the parks over the years. I'd probably have to go through and look at it, but I mean, it was based off something that existed at the time, and that was, I believe, 1930 something. Like I think it was the World's Fair and Expo in San Francisco had a treasure island. So this was definitely a reference to that, and the design was referencing that. So it was
Yeah.
something people knew in that. But yeah, it's. I even think there was a park right around here that was called Pleasure Island that was actually done by whoever the guy who did a lot of the layout for Disneyland that Walt eventually fired for claiming it was his ideas for everything, came and then did all these like basically Disneyland clones around the country, and there was one here in Wakefield that's been gone for decades now, and now it's a pedestrian mall. So that was Pleasure Island here.
Yeah. Well, again, it seemed like as I'm watching this that it just seemed like a place where, I'm surprised. I love the model home that's for destruction. Like that's its role is to be demolished. Like somebody builds a model home so it could be demolished.
But
Um,
what is one of the things that Jiminy says is like drinking and smoking and playing pool? And
I know,
all I could
right?
think of that was Music Man.
He's a what? He's a music man. He sells clarinets to the kids in the town. Yeah, no, you're right. That is true. I was looking at the chat, and Fire Chief said no one questioned when where a 70-year-old man got a 9-year-old boy from. A 70-year-old man got a 9-year-old boy from. True. Like again, it's just like, hey, I got this to get this kid, and he's going to school, and here, let me reach in my pocket. Here's an apple for the teacher. That'll solve everything. Give him the apple. That'll be fine. They won't question any of it. It's fine. Um, so yeah, but I'm watching Pleasure Island, and I kept thinking it seemed like a missed opportunity, especially with what Pleasure Island, the
Yeah,
nightlife thing, was in Florida. Why wouldn't you have just named it Pleasure Island for Pinocchio? Why would you need to come up with this different backstory about Merryweather Pleasure? It's just so weird. Maybe they started
I
it and then they
get.
were like, "Oh, this is too far over the top, or nobody will get it, and we need to back off on it and create our own thing."
Yeah, can you imagine if the Adventurers Club was like the Fight Club instead?
Yeah, exactly. Let me go in here and sock a guy. um, yeah. Oh,
But then you couldn't
Lampy.
get word of mouth because the first rule.
Yeah, you can't tell anybody, obviously. Yeah. So, by the way, also weird to me as something that I noticed a long time ago is that everybody's name ends in an O because you've got Geppetto and Pinocchio and Cleo and Figaro in the fam, all of the ones in the fam. Now, obviously not Honest John and Gideon and the Coachman and just Stromboli, but I mean the ones in the fam are all in an O. And also, I love the fact that they all hate the name when he goes, "Hey, we're gonna call him Pinocchio," and they're all like, "No, that's not any good." And then he's like, "It's done. He's Pinocchio."
Well,
So
it ends in O because it's Italian, uh, not German, despite the look and village house and
good point. Yeah. I love just again when we look at like, hey, there's church windows, stained glass windows to throw bricks through, and all these other things, and the effects that are happening in the background, but the like those creepy like shadow dudes like that have no form other than that. Like, do you think that was done to save a buck, or is it just because the goons weren't supposed to look like
I
anything
think
in
it was
particular?
supposed to be anonymity and being creepy and all that. I think my wife put the theory out that those are what happens to the adults who go to Pleasure Island.
Hmm.
They're
They
still
don't turn into.
serving coachmen, they become that. Um, but once again, like I think we also brought this up on when we did the really deep dive into this is what's a donkey worth that having to set up all this stuff at Pleasure Island for a group of kids? Like you got to fix that house. You're running roller coasters. You're doing all this stuff. What was like
Yeah,
donkeys
I
were
don't know.
valuable. animals, but they're not the prized bull.
Right. By the way, as we're watching this merry-go-round, you can see like they're falling off, like they're crash test dummies. Like they're not even they're not even colored differently. It's just like a bunch of brown, like crash test dummies falling off of the carousel. But you're right. I mean, the next day the whole place is left in shambles. I mean, what's it cost to fix a carousel, a roller coaster, a Ferris wheel, fix all that stuff up? And are you making your money back in donkeys? Why wouldn't they call them donkeys? Why do they call them jackasses?
Because they're acting like a jackass.
Again, feels bad, Ron. Feels bad.
I mean, I don't think that's even a metaphor. That's just, as thinly veiled as you could possibly be.
Yeah. So yeah, but again, when I'm watching Lampwick, the only thing I'm thinking about is that Daring Journey attraction. So let me go ahead, because again, you've done a deep dive into this, so I feel like you could handle some trivia questions, right?
I'll see what I can do.
I,
It's been a while since I did that. I think it came out in 2017.
that's fine.
Um,
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Everybody loves a little bit of a little bit of trivia. So again, thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate you coming. Tell a friend. Subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot of good content coming up, and I want to tell you about it in a bit. But for now, let me hit you with this trivia, Ron. So, and you guys play along in the chat. The first question that I have for you is, when the movie opens up and Jiminy Cricket is
Alice in Wonderland and
starting.
Peter Pan.
Oh my God, you knew it! You knew it! See, look at you, like you're gonna nail it. Yeah, I was gonna ask you what the two books were that were sitting there with Pinocchio. Did you? Is that something you just always knew,
We
or
we know we
did you
talked
know
about
that was
that in the.
coming?
I talked about that specifically in the last one, that those were put there because they were already like in the development pipeline. Like obviously they wouldn't be out for a decade,
Right.
but Walt said, these are the stories I want to do as a movie.
Well, that's too easy. That's too easy. This one also is probably too easy, but I feel like I'm gonna ask it anyway. You ready?
Sure.
What color is Pinocchio's bow?
Is it green? I'm also colorblind, so I'm not going to play that.
Oh,
Like,
well,
this could be a
see,
little
now,
hard.
no, that's not. Well, come
No.
on, what a cop out. I'm colorblind. Come on, no, it's blue. It's blue. I just think it's one of those things, like you look at him throughout this movie and you're like maybe not knowing, but colorblind obviously
Yeah,
gets
no,
gets you a,
that's no. I
that
could
gets you
see
out of
blue and
it.
green, but
Yeah.
that one I just didn't know. No.
Yep. Would you ever watch New Girl? The one of the characters in there was Bishop was colorblind, and he's like, what color is that? And he goes, brown like money. Which of
No,
course
my bigger
money's
problems are
green.
like shades of things, like blue, purples, stuff like. I always had the purple river in art class in like elementary school.
Well, I'm gonna have to skip the next one then, because I was gonna ask you another color question. So,
Go ahead, we'll
what?
try.
No, no, no. There's no fun now. No, 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 no. All right. So, what's on Figaro's headboard on his little bed?
Um, it two birds looking down with eggs, or am
No,
I thinking something else?
I think you're thinking of something. That actually sounds like something out of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and their beds.
Might
I
also be one of the
noticed it.
chairs on Taskmaster, but
I noticed it because it was a little unique. Um, it's a cat angel.
oh, that's
A little weird, right?
yeah.
A little weird. But I love that in he's got a sandbox next to him. Like, is that? I guess that's supposed to be a litter box, but it's he's got a sandbox next to him with a little
He looks like
shovel.
he
I guess
cleans
he
up
does.
after himself.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean,
Can I train my
there's
cats
that.
to do that?
The footboard had mice on it, which I also thought was interesting. Like there are mice around his footboard, and then the headboard has the angel cat on it. So there's that. Um, to become a real boy, what are the three things that the Blue Fairy says that he has to be?
Brave,
Yep.
honest, and true to himself.
Brave, truthful, and unselfish. Which again, lot of responsibility to put on a kid that was just born. Because I think most kids have problems with some of that stuff at some point, right? Brave, truthful, and
Yeah.
unselfish. Um, the last one I have for you, you probably know, and again, it makes me question why this hasn't happened before. But um, when Honest John and Gideon meet up with the coachman, they meet up with him in a pub. What's the name of the pub?
No idea.
The Red Lobster Inn.
I could see why they wouldn't be making that, but that might be a trademark issue.
Could have been. Well, I mean, I don't know when Red Lobster came around, but I feel like this probably predates Red Lobster. Maybe if it was post 1955 when the parks opened, but it seems like you should have had a Red Lobster Inn. But I did think that was kind of funny that there's a Red Lobster Inn, um, and that's
It's a
they
port
it's
town. I guess that makes sense. Like,
yeah.
because I believe the Red Lion is the most popular pub name, so
Yeah.
could be a play off that.
Well, the color question I was going to ask you, the other color question I was going to ask you was when Jiminy first comes into the house, he's carrying a carpet bag. And what color is the carpet bag? But
No idea
again,
on that one.
yeah, it's light blue with flowers on it, which I thought was interesting because she gives him a new outfit as part of his new, job, his new
Yeah,
uniform as a conscience, and then of course gives him the badge at the end. So, all right, I appreciate. I think you did pretty well. I mean, you nailed the Alice and Wonderland and the Peter Pan one, but you were like, it seemed ready. You seemed almost too ready for
that
that one.
one.
So
Yeah, that one is one I specifically remember talking about. Like, I didn't go like what we did was more of the history, the making of, than like the gags and stuff on
the
screen.
content, yeah. Well, we're
Yeah,
making
I
it a
mean, we
little
talked
different,
obviously
so
about it, but
they
yeah,
can be companion pieces. Um, okay. So hold on a second. Let me make sure. Um, it worries me when I'm looking at the preview for the stream and I don't see the stream playing. So it looked like it was buffering. So I just want to make sure everybody out there was able to see us. Let's talk about the music because we talked about When You Wish Upon a Star at the very beginning and how big a deal that was. But Give a Little Whistle was one that I was talking about, the sing along that used to play in our store when I was in the Disney store. When I worked in the Disney store, it was back when you wore the cardigans, like the Clubhouse Mickey Mouse Club cardigans, and the Give a Little Whistle bit would come on all the time, so that one's ingrained in my head. The background score of it feels very much like the score to Fantasyland in general, so I get park vibes immediately when I hear that kind of stuff. And then there's An Actor's Life for Me and I Got No Strings, which again, I Got No Strings made creepy by James Spader as Ultron in in the Avengers: Age of Ultron because of the way he did the whole "I Got No Strings on Me." But that's a pretty good mix of songs that are so well known. I mean, again,
and
it's a
you know
classic
the
for a reason, but these songs are all like part of our as our our Disney fans, our Disney fandom. It's part of our soundtrack.
and the score, and I think it was obviously Wish Upon a Star, both were the Oscar won Best Song and Best Score that year, which I think was they did it again. It was not till Mary Poppins that happens again. So these were Disney's first feature length real Oscars. They'd won, the special one and the technical achievement for Snow White, but these were like the first real competitive Oscars that they won for a feature. They had the
Yeah.
shorts, obviously, but
So, yeah. So the music again. they're all bangers, but a lot happens in 90 minutes. I thought this about Dumbo as well. When Maleko and I reviewed Dumbo a while back, that a lot happens in a short amount of time. We go to a lot of places. We do a lot of things. We're set in the world of Geppetto, and we are introduced to all of the characters and Jiminy Cricket as our host and telling us what's happening, and then we learn about them, and then here comes the blue fairy and grants the wish and makes him a boy, or makes him alive, which then we've got that kind of that road we go through, and then he sends him off to school, so we have Honest John taking him to Stromboli, and that whole scene and that bit, and rescuing him, and the lie, and the blue fairy coming back, and then he's going to go again, but then he gets taken to Pleasure Island, and that whole thing, and then he comes home, but now Geppetto's gone, and he's taken Cleo with him, which is a weird like flex, is to take a fishbowl with you somewhere, but but he takes Cleo and Figaro, and they go off looking for Pinocchio. And the dove that brings the letter, are we supposed to know that that's like from the blue fairy? Who brings that letter? Who
There's
sent
a
that?
lot of there's a lot of stuff like in the book where I said there were a lot of other you know what I mean,
Anthropomorphic.
animals, and there's the blue fairy, then there's a turquoise fairy that they live with that does things for, like, there's a whole bunch of different things that happen in, because the book was originally done as a serial, like, as was common in the 19th century. So I think that is the fairy. Let's look at the glow and all that, and I think that's what we're supposed to kind of assume. Uh, Otherwise, it makes even less sense than anything else.
Right, right. So he gets this letter that says, "Hey, it's a cat."
Yep.
He gets this letter that says, "Is that Figaro?" It's not.
This is Pepper.
Oh, Pepper coming at you
Okay,
in
not there,
3D.
Pepper.
Um, looks more like a Toulouse, I think. Anyway, so when he's got this letter and he finds out where his dad is and he goes and finds him, Geppetto seems fine where he is. He's like fishing, and he's got a system down for, and I don't know at this point how long Geppetto has been gone or how long Pinocchio has been gone, because it feels like for us it's happening in real time, but clearly there are cobwebs in his shop, and he's been away and he's stuck.
He, in the book, he's gone for 5 months, if I remember correctly.
Gotcha.
So it is a time, and you don't get that from the story because everything just seems to take place over a couple days. But yeah, the cobwebs are the first hint that some time has actually passed.
Yeah. So they go down into the ocean. They go to find Monstro. They find him. They get in there. Geppetto seems like he's doing okay. He's fishing. He's got a nice bed set up. He's like, let's just live here forever. Pinocchio's like, no, 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 no. I got you. We're gonna get out of here. We're gonna make him sneeze. We're gonna go. Then there's this whole chase, and then we think we've lost him, which is a very Disney thing. We think we've lost Pinocchio, but then it all comes back, and he's like, the darkness of Geppetto crying on his bed, and then Pinocchio becomes a real boy, and he's like, "No, sorry, you're dead. Lay back down." That was I'm like, ugh, it just didn't feel right. It's like, no, you're dead. Lay down, lay down. You're dead.
Yeah,
But
I
I mean,
mean,
I
a
guess
piece of wood
that's
drowned somehow.
yeah, exactly. Um, but it's a happy ending, and he becomes a real boy, and Jiminy gets his badge, and everybody lives happily ever after, and it's all great. um so there's an attraction at Disneyland, which is also at Tokyo Disney, which is also in Disneyland Paris, called,
Tokyo first, actually.
yeah, which is crazy, because here's the thing is, like, I didn't go to Disneyland until I was like in my 20s, and I've been a ton of times since then, but by the time I got there it was already there. And so I didn't realize that it was like the Mickey Mouse Club Theater before it was Pinocchio's Daring Journey, and it was redone as part of the Fantasyland um, renovation in 1983. And so you've got Pinocchio's Daring Journey, which is the only place I've ever ridden it because I've never been to Tokyo and I didn't ride it in Paris. And so I love that attraction. I wish every Disney classic movie had a dark ride. I really do. I wish they all had a dark ride.
Paris was my first on that. I'd been to Disneyland before that, but it was always just 1 day trip, so it was basically focusing on like Matterhorn and Indy and things like that. So that never came around till
Yeah.
I had a little bit more time there. But yeah, it is. It's a great dark ride, and you can tell it's more modern than a lot of the others. Even though we're down to like what, two in world, like of those kind of dark rides. Like Land has so many of them that are great. I wish we would get more, but
Well, I mean, we've got the Little Mermaid was added as one of
yeah,
those dark rides. So that's like I love that a new one was made. And in Tokyo, they make them all the time, like with the Tangled one and the Frozen one, and like Frozen, I guess is kind of that a dark ride, the one over at Epcot. So you could probably throw that into, but it's not the old school like we're talking about. It's not the the get in the car and ride through carnival style kind of a thing that are so charming. But Pinocchio's Daring Journey, I feel like sits right next to Snow White's Enchanted Wish and Peter Pan, and they all feel like they're made at the same time. Whether it's upgrades to the other ones that made it that way, I don't
yeah,
know. But like him, like when Lampwick turns around, it's very similar to the witch, the queen turning around and being the witch when he's in the mirror and then he turns around and he's the donkey. Like I love that effect, and riding through and the coachman putting you in the box and all that kind of stuff. I think it's really cool.
yeah. No, it's probably my favorite of the ones there. Definitely. I
Yeah.
think I've done Enchanted Wish. I can't remember when did that open.
Enchanted Wish opened, I think, 2021 when the park reopened. But
Yeah, so I have been there. I went. I was there in 22. So yeah,
because it was originally the Snow White Scary
Scary
Adventure, just like
Adventure.
the
Yeah,
yeah, just like the one in 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 Florida was. So in 2022, they did something a little bit weirdly unnecessary. Is they did this? They did this live action version with Tom Hanks of Pinocchio. Did you watch this one?
no, I haven't. I actually have barely watched any of the live action remakes. I think it was basically like I think I've seen the first Lion King and Beauty and the Beast, and that might be it. I
The
really
first
have
Lion
not
King.
had interest in them.
Yeah, the first Lion King is the worst one, I think, and I love the Lion King, but it just didn't seem necessary because it's a shot for shot remake of the original.
That's what a lot of these just feel like to me. And I mean, there's so many different Pinocchios. Like there's the Drew Carey Geppetto, there's the Jonathan Taylor Thomas, there's the Sherry Duvall's Theater, where I believe it's Paul Rubens as Pinocchio. Like there's a lot of these out there, and none
Guillermo
of
del
them
Toro.
really. I completely forgot about that one because I forgot that got made. Like most of Del Toro's movies just linger forever.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, nothing is ever really like this one is so good, and
special.
so many of the elements are different from the original that you're cribbing from it if you're doing anything if you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, by the way, I don't have a lot of merch from Pinocchio. I was in worked in a movie theater in '92 when the re-release happened, so I have a poster somewhere, one sheet of that. Um, and my daughter bought me this, which was a Burger King. Do you have that too?
Yeah, Laurel has her original one sitting on the shelf.
Yeah, my she bought me this. This is still in the box. I mean, it opens and closes, but it's the original Burger King glass from I
Yep.
think it was '94 when they were releasing a bunch of these uh, on video. And so I have I think Snow White and I have that I got originally, and then she bought me this Pinocchio one, and that's about it. So I
I
mean, it's 85 years old. I think it's time for them to make a popcorn bucket. I'll buy it.
I have some vinyls. I don't think pop. I have a Jiminy Cricket vinyl like that came in one of those when they did the the Disney Loot Crate, whatever that was called. That came in there. I don't think I might have. probably have a Figaro plush somewhere. Um, but other than just like a couple plushes, I don't. You don't see much.
Yeah, I think it was
The
called like the
Figaro
Disney
was the
Treasures.
Figaro a cat shirt that was a real one, or was that something NT made?
Hmm, not sure.
Can't even remember.
Speaking of shirts that you had made, you've got your As Seen on Disney Plus shirt because you were on Disney Plus. You're now part of the
Yeah,
Disney Plus family because of the Not Just a Goof movie. That's awesome. And
yeah, we all made it onto that, which is kind of remarkable, actually. I think.
Mandy's asking me what would the popcorn bucket be of. That's interesting. I don't know. The screaming block of wood. That
I
would be a
mean,
good one.
they put Monstro into everything, so like
Monstro,
Phantasmic and
Monstro, and Storybook Land's canal boats is
Canal
Monstro. You
Boats.
go into Monstro's mouth at Disneyland. That's a good point. Yeah. I don't know. I would guess it would be like Pinocchio sitting down because they do a lot of that with like the character. Like I have this one, like with Pumbaa. Like they could do something with Pinocchio that size, maybe. I don't know. Or how about Lampwick as a jackass? I'll buy that too. Um, I don't know. It's kind of funny. Fire Chief said a cigar smoking donkey. There you go. That would be something we could do. All right, before we get the final thoughts and on this movie, I do want to thank you guys for being with us and I appreciate you finding us on our new channel, the Park Adventurers Club. Just so you know, coming up, we did a live on Monday night. I did a live unboxing of boxes, so you can check that out here on the channel. And then tonight we're doing the Pinocchio review live, and then this Friday. My son is doing his own trivia show, and I say my son, he's not 5, he's in his 20s, but he's doing his own trivia show. We were very excited to come up with the dumbest name you have ever heard of for a trivia show. So join us Friday night at 8 p.m. live for Hakuna Matrivia. Oh my gosh, I just love saying it. Hakuna
Uh,
Matrivia. It's going to be, yes, groan all you want, my friend. It's happening Friday night at 8 o'clock. And tune in and you'll know more than the people on the game show know, but it's going to be fun. And then this Sunday night we are going to be doing the Park Adventurers Club live at 8:30. We're going to be having another meeting of the Park Adventurers Club, which is our park show that we do every Sunday night. We didn't do one last week because it was that whole Easter thing, but we did one the week before called Does Disney Need a Fifth Gate? So please join us for that. Also want to say that if you'd like to help out the channel, you can join our Patreon. It's patreon.com, go pack. Park Adventurers Club, PAC, go pack. I want to do a special thanks to Jungle Cruiser, Rosita, William, Monica, Vince, Jordan, and Sienna for being our top tier let's call them benefactors, producers for this show. So thank you, or for this channel. So thank you guys so much for being here with us. Hopefully you'll join us for a lot more of this content. And again, a great way to help us out is to subscribe if you haven't already, and to give this video a like and watch a couple of our other videos. That would all be great. And you can find us anytime at lookontheplusside.com. We'll take you right to all of our reviews, or go to parkadventurersclub.com for our complete channel. That's the spiel. That's the speech. Now is the time, my friend. Now is the best time, Ron. Now is the time when I ask you, and I feel like I know the answer. I feel like this is part of your world, and so I'm going to go ahead and ask you anyway. Would you recommend this movie?
that's going to be a Piescio. Uh, no, it's beyond a classic. It's got a solid story. It's got memorable bits, even though it's not the most coherent of stories. It is a series of almost vignettes that tie together, but just to watch the animation evolve and see some of these things that weren't done before and just gorgeously, it's definitely worth it for that. And once again, it's just a cultural, you know, building block that so many other movies are going to reference things like this. I think those are important things to see, even if certain parts haven't aged well or storytelling's evolved. That excuse me, it's not meant for modern audiences in certain ways. I think this overcomes enough of that with a lot of its strengths.
Okay. I mean, again, I would also recommend this movie because it's a classic. It is in the Disney DNA. And so if you are a Disney fan, which I assume all of you are, if you're here with us tonight, it's in the parks. We talked about like the Monstro head and that you float into a storybook canal boats and the Pinocchio's Daring Journey attraction and meeting Pinocchio and Ron talked about at the beginning that Jiminy Cricket has almost become a mascot for the company and the When You Wish Upon a Star and the other songs that you find in here like Hi Diddly Dee and Actors Life for Me and I Got No Strings and so many of these things are touchstones into the Disney fandom that I feel like you have to watch this. And I would encourage you, if you haven't watched it in a long time, or you could think, hey, you know what, Rob, I've seen this recently. You probably haven't seen it recently enough, unless you watched it like Ron and I did for this review. So, I mean, I would definitely say go back and watch it. It's a fun thing to go back and see, and again, they take you to so many places in such a short amount of time. It's an easy watch at 90 minutes or 91 minutes. So watch it, come back, go to the comments below. Let us know what you think, and we want to hear from you guys. And again, hopefully you'll join us for all of our reviews. Next week we are doing 101 Dalmatians. We're doing it. We're doing Ron, we're doing two back-to-back Disney full-length animated features, which is something we
Oh,
haven't
okay.
done.
You're not doing the live action there. That's a live action I've seen.
Oh, oh yeah, the one with the Glenn Close or the Cruella?
Yeah, the Glenn Close.
Okay. Yeah, no, we're doing the real deal, the original 101 Dalmatians. So hopefully you guys will come and join us again next Wednesday night at 9 p.m. for another look on the plus side. But also, again, we're gonna have a live show Friday night. We got a live show Sunday night, and every day we're dropping a little bit of content. So hopefully you'll come back again and again. Join the pack. Go to patreon.com/go pack. You get at some levels a pin and a button, so that's fun and exciting. So hopefully we'll see you there. If not, have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Thanks again, Ron.
Bye.